In the interest of trying something a little bit different, today we're in Flight Simulator 2024 on a rather cloudy day, looking at making a little stop in Seattle. So we're gonna see if we can descend through the clouds and fly around downtown Seattle, a place I've always liked to go in person. So anyways, today we're talking about how it's very easy to feel like because you've never done something, you really shouldn't begin. And I'll give you an example. I used to be a salaried manager in a Walmart store, and I was responsible for the fresh areas, so things like deli and so forth. And what I found was I never really had time to go into the deli and run the fryer and figure out how to make the food and stuff like that. Or the same basic logic would apply to going into, say, the bakery and learning how to decorate a cake or something like that. So I just kind of never went in, right? And when you're supposed to be managing a group of people and you don't know how to do the job that you're supposed to be making them do, it can be rather difficult to approach that. It's awkward. And then what can happen is you don't really want people to know that you don't know how to do their job, so you don't mention the fact that you are essentially clueless, and then you kind of hope that you'll never really be in a spot where you have to actually demonstrate knowledge. Now, the truth of the matter is all of the people out there who are doing the work, they know what you know how to do. They know what you're not able to do. Like, this is not a surprise to them. Meanwhile, if you go in and you're kind of a newbie and you don't really know what you're doing and you just ask silly questions and you try to get your head wrapped around what's going on, they're not going to hold that against you. If anything, they would be glad and appreciative of the fact that you're willing to take the time to actually show interest and learn something. And it's also true that you're probably not going to come away with an overwhelming amount of knowledge. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a subject matter expert just because you went in there and spent half of a day learning how to do a job. But you're going to know a little bit more than you knew before, and that's the point that's important. Sometimes we think that if we don't master something 100%, there's no point in doing it at all. And that's just simply not true. If you put a little bit of effort into learning how someone else maybe does their job and you work with them or for them, it's just showing interest. It's helping you to be a little bit more well-rounded as a person, and it's showing other people that they matter and that what they do matters and that you actually take interest in what they're doing. So the point of all of this is really twofold. First of all, don't feel like you have to master something in order to learn something about it. You know, I'm not a professional economist. There's a lot of things I don't know, but I can take some time and read the Economist magazine. I can do some micro learnings on Khan Academy. I can do some little things that are going to help me be a little bit more well-rounded as an individual or as an investor or, you know, just in general. And no, it's not getting a college education in some particular field. It's not anything outlandish. It's just becoming slightly more familiar today than I was yesterday with something. And that's in its own way quite meaningful. But pride tends to get in the way of our personal growth quite often. And then we'll be too busy thinking, well, I didn't do this before, and so now if I do, it's going to show that I'm not very well-rounded, and I don't really want to let other people catch drift of that. I don't want to be transparent in that way, so I'm going to just sort of pretend that I know what I'm doing and not mention the things that are my weak points. And in the end, when you do that, if you do it enough, you wind up in a situation where it's sort of a self-defeating spiral, where the more you pretend that you know what you're doing when you don't, the more it gets difficult for you to actually venture out and work on your personal self-development in a way that's useful or meaningful or helpful. So don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions if you don't know what you're doing or you need to learn. There's no shame in that. Even if maybe some of those are questions that you should have asked in the past. They're things that maybe on some level you're ashamed that you don't know these things or something like that. Don't feel like that's a reason not to ask the questions today. And then by the same measure, don't ever feel like you have to make a huge plunge in order to, I guess, have a sense of merit or accomplishment. Just asking some simple questions, doing some small learnings, finding a little way to be a little bit more engaged or involved than you were before. That's really all anyone could ask for. And you might be surprised just how much doing small things repeatedly can turn into a really big return on investment down the road when you start making it a daily practice. And I think it's just really hard to begin because our pride gets in the way and our feeling that we have to do something really big. We have to finish. We have to have a level of mastery in order to, get bragging rights for accomplishment. So, if I say, well, you need to, go to college for 4 years and get a degree in something. And if you haven't done that, then, you haven't done anything that you can speak to as an accomplishment. Well, that's a pretty big commitment for a lot of people. So it's easy to just say, well, that ship has sailed on me, so I'm just not going to really work on myself. I'm not really going to necessarily focus on personal development because, I don't have the money or the time, or maybe it's too late in my life to say I'm going to go do another 4 or 8 years of school, right? So we just kind of think, well, if I can't do everything right now, then I guess I just shouldn't do anything at all. And that's not the kind of an attitude that you really want to have. You're much better off saying, well, I'm going to do something today. I'm going to learn something today. I'm going to be a little more engaged and a little more involved than I was yesterday. And just build a few routines that you keep on circling back to and keep on working on, keep on trying to make them consistent. I got a checklist of just a few things that I really want to do every day, and I try my best to make a point to do those things. Maybe it's go for a walk and, get my 10 miles in if I can exercise for 10 miles. It's not a huge thing necessarily, but it's something that will ultimately be an investment in my health if I do it consistently and all the time. Or if I want to spend some time engaged in writing projects, writing a book or journaling, to make a point to do those things every day. Or maybe it's making a video like this every day, even if I don't necessarily feel like I have a huge amount to say, just to make a point to do it every day so that I can say I'm building that habit and I'm sharing something with the world and with others. It's all of the little things, maybe doing a Khan Academy course. It's totally free. It's something that you can learn something from. or reading a news magazine instead of sitting around watching more doom and gloom YouTube videos or random clickbait stuff. It's making a point not to gossip about people. You know, it's just these little things. Like, you know, it's amazing how even if it's not complicated, it can be really hard to do it. And then you realize, you know, like I can say, well, I'm not going to do the water cooler gossip about people, but then how easy is it to fall into that trap? And next thing you know, you've been, you know, just talking crap about people a little bit here and there just because it's kind of fun to do and other people feed into it. You know, I'm not saying that that's, you know, necessarily something I do all the time, but it is something that I do to some point, to some degree. And, you know, if we can't win at the little things, if you can't, you know, just make a point that you're going to read one chapter in a book every day, or learn one thing that you didn't know before, or stop doing basic little things that you know are harmful to yourself or others. If you can't do stuff like that, you know, then how are you going to do anything bigger? You know, you got to start somewhere. You've got to have a sense of willingness to change and willingness to do things that you maybe haven't done before. And they don't have to be big things. They just have to be measurable and put into daily practice. And then, you know, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And it's probably something that you can't overstate, just how much, when you start and you do something every day and you start to make it a habit, you start to be consistent about it, how much of a change that can make. I do think, though, sometimes you have to give up things, though, you know? Like, I think about, you know, certain things I like to spend time doing, like watching YouTubers that talk about stuff going on in the world, global events and politics and stuff like that. And I do firmly believe that it's important to know what's going on in the world. And I also enjoy listening to these guys, but I've come to realize that quite often, you know, they're regurgitating basically the same sort of thing over and over again. It's not edifying. It's not helpful. It's not giving me a well-rounded understanding of the economy necessarily. It's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit kind of, I guess, hearing something that's exciting or something that's maybe controversial, whatever it is. It's telling you what you want to hear, but it's not really giving you something that's going to help you in any particular way in your life. And so my goal is to cut out some of that, to cut back on all of that kind of stuff, and instead focus more on the things that I can really say are truly interesting, truly adding value to my life and helping me to have a better understanding of philosophy or of my place in the world, things like that. You know, I was reading, actually, just this morning, an article in The Economist about how more people today, especially millennials and Gen Z folks, are looking at astrology as something that appeals to them. And so it's kind of interesting how in a more perhaps scientific and progressive world, there's more people who are looking for, I guess, a sense of maybe faith or something in more of a pseudo-scientific kind of a way, looking at things like horoscopes and stuff like that. And I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's interesting, though, and I think sometimes maybe it says something about the fact that people would rather believe a comforting lie than the reality of life. Maybe it's easier to have something that you can go to, a religion, a horoscope, something like that. It's easier to do that than it is to just say, you know, here's the reality of what we know and what we don't know about life. I've also been reading about Stoicism and cynicism. And what's interesting to me about that is, if I say cynicism, you think it's basically kind of having a glass half empty approach toward life, always believing the worst about people, things like that. Like, you don't ever really think of cynicism as a good thing. But the truth is, cynicism is not really necessarily defined by that. Cynicism is more about having this attitude that the truth has to come first and above all other things. And, you know, maybe a healthy form of cynicism would be for me to say, I may believe good about the world, but that doesn't change the fact that I have to plan for my retirement. I have to safeguard myself to make sure that other people don't do me harm by not putting myself in a position where they stand to to do wrong by me. You know, you have to kind of trust but verify. You have to make sure that you're protecting your interests and doing what is right for you, not just blindly believing that the world is going to always look out for you. But that doesn't mean that you have to be negative about life. It doesn't mean that you have to think that the world is necessarily out to get you. It's just, you know, you don't go hiking without some bear spray, right? That's kind of what cynicism at the heart of it is. That being said, Stoicism is a little different. And the general idea of Stoicism is it's not about being indifferent to everything. It's not about having no emotions. It's not about being completely disconnected and not caring about anything. What it really is about being able to find peace in the storm. It's about being able to say, even if I die tomorrow, I'm still at peace with life. I understand that my sense of spiritual well-being, my peace of mind, is not defined by external factors. It's within my control to choose what kind of an attitude I want to have every day. And that's really what Stoicism is. Actually, the word stoa, which gives word to Stoicism, was in reference to the word porch. It's actually the word porch in Greek, and it referred to the porch that people would study philosophy from as they engaged as students of the teachings of Socrates. But I thought that was interesting that, maybe the key to success in life is to stop focusing on external factors, to stop trying to be maybe so competitive, and to be more interested in, resorting to the porch of life, to think about things at a high level, to ask questions, to set your ego aside, and to be at peace with life, no matter what adversity or blessings come to you. And to believe the best of the world, but also to protect yourself from it with rational safeguards for your liberty, your safety, your security, your well-being. That is what life ultimately really is all about. And how do we begin? Well, we begin with small, actionable steps every day to seek out the truth instead of clickbait and all of those bad habits that are not necessarily evil, but when we do them every day, instead of doing more wise and good things, they can eat up years of our lives. And I do think about that a lot, how we think about, maybe how do we get to be financially right-sided? How do we get to be where we need to be in our jobs or careers, things like that. But what we don't think enough about is the fact that our time matters, and we need to spend our time in a way that is meaningful. We need to spend our time in a way that's deliberate. We need to spend it in a way that is edifying and encouraging and spent seeking the truth instead of just seeking things that sound good and stuff that we want to go down the rabbit hole clicking on. But it doesn't really make our lives better. It doesn't help us to make other people's lives better. It doesn't help us in the pursuit of philosophy. It doesn't help us to contemplate life in a different way. It doesn't help us to learn new things. Those are the things that we need to let go and spend time. Spend time with yourself, thinking about what it is that makes life meaningful. As always, best of luck to you, and thanks so much for watching.